Welcome. We are here to discuss the Great Unlocking. When we examine the trajectory of human civilization, we are ultimately looking at a history of energy transitions. For millennia, our species was bound by physical limits on how fast we could move, how much we could build, and how many of us the Earth could support. These limits were dictated by the immediate flow of solar energy. The story we will explore today is how we shattered those constraints. We will examine how the sequential mastery of coal, hydrocarbons, and electricity didn't just provide heat or light, but fundamentally altered the relationship between humanity and the physical world. As we look at this mechanism on the screen, understand it as a representation of our escape from the biological ceiling. However, as Vaclav Smil and other energy historians remind us, these transitions are not instant software updates. They are profound, material transformations that unfold over centuries. For the vast majority of human history, we lived in the age of phytomass. This was a world strictly capped by biology. Our primary energy source was the immediate energy of the sun, captured inefficiently by photosynthesis in plants and converted into motion by muscle. As the data on the right indicates, this system had a hard ceiling. Air-dry wood provides roughly 17 gigajoules per ton. While this sustained us, it was incredibly diffuse. The power output of our prime movers was equally limited. A working man could sustain perhaps 80 to 100 watts of output, roughly the power of a single old-fashioned light bulb. A horse could deliver perhaps 500 to 700 watts. This thermodynamic reality placed a hard limit on production. Referencing the supplementary data, consider the resource intensity of the past. Producing just 1 kilogram of glass required nearly 2.5 kilograms of wood. Smelting a ton of iron required mountains of charcoal. In this paradigm, scaling civilization meant physically expanding the land area dedicated to forests, creating a direct competition between energy and food. The transition to coal was the moment humanity stopped relying on the surface flow of solar energy and began harvesting the subsurface stock of ancient sunlight. The energetic advantage was immediate and overwhelming. As the visual demonstrates, bituminous coal offers roughly 25 gigajoules per ton, a massive leap over wood. But the real story is scalability. Look at the metallurgy example. To produce today's volume of pig iron using charcoal would require a harvest of wood exceeding the world's entire industrial timber output. It would be physically impossible to energize the modern industrial economy with wood. We would have deforested the planet centuries ago. However, observe the timeline of this transition. It was not overnight. In the United States, it took 41 years, from 1843 to 1884, for coal to move from a niche fuel to supplying 50% of energy. In France, it took 75 years. This establishes a critical precedent. Energy transitions are governed by the inertia of infrastructure and the slow turnover of capital stock. We often obsess over fuels, but the history of energy is inseparable from the history of prime movers, the devices that convert thermal energy into kinetic work. In 1850, as shown in the chart, nearly 85% of the work done in the U.S. economy was still performed by human and animal muscle. We were burning coal, yes, but we were still limited by biology for motive power. The steam engine changed this, becoming the first inanimate prime mover to dwarf muscle power. By 1950, the situation had inverted. Inanimate machines provided over 80% of our work. This shift from the belt-driven, central steam factory to the decentralized power of later engines unleashed mechanical speed and industrial scale. It allowed us to decouple economic output from the physical limitations of the human body. As the text notes, a single steam locomotive could replace the work of hundreds of horses, doing so with a reliability that biology could never match. The second great unlock was the transition to liquid and gaseous hydrocarbons. Why did oil conquer the world? The answer lies in the physics of, quote, energy density. As the graphic illustrates, crude oil packs approximately 38 to 42 gigajoules per ton, nearly double that of standard steam coal, and it does so in a liquid form that is easily pumped, stored, and transported. This density is destiny. It enabled the internal combustion engine, ICE, a prime mover that is light enough to carry its own fuel source. You can build a coal-fired factory, but you cannot practically build a coal-fired airplane or a coal-fired passenger car. The fuel is simply too heavy, and the energy content too low. The global tipping point occurred in the mid-1960s when oil surpassed coal as the primary energy source. This was not just a change in burning material, it was the birth of a world in motion, enabling the conquest of land, sea, and air. The marriage of hydrocarbons and new prime movers, specifically the diesel engine and the gas turbine, created the interconnected global economy we recognize today. Look at the trajectory of maritime trade, from the first container ships in 1956 carrying 100 containers to today's behemoths carrying 24,000. This 240-fold increase in capacity is powered by massive diesel engines, the unsung heroes of globalization. In the air, the gas turbine, jet engine, allowed us to jump from 28 billion passenger kilometers in 1950 to over 6.6 trillion by 2015. This exponential conquering of distance was only possible because of the high power-to-mass ratio of jet engines and the high energy density of kerosene. Simultaneously, the democratization of the automobile transformed the terrestrial landscape. We moved from a world where travel was a rare luxury to one where global mobility is a fundamental pillar of the economy. Vaclav Smil calls electrification a, quote, transition within a transition. It is not a primary source of energy, but a universal carrier that offers unmatched qualities: effortless availability, silence, cleanliness at the point of use, and infinite convertibility. It took the United States 75 years, from 1882 to 1956, to effectively electrify the nation, a process that fundamentally reorganized society. Without electricity, we lose more than just lights. We lose the ability to process information, to sustain modern healthcare, and to preserve food. It is the indispensable system. While fossil fuels provided the brute force for industrialization, electricity provided the nervous system. It allowed for the separation of power generation from power consumption, enabling the clean, quiet, and precise operation of everything, from a factory robot to the device you are holding in your pocket. In the industrial sector, the shift from steam-driven belts to individual electric motors was the single most important factor in the near doubling of manufacturing productivity between 1899 and 1929. It allowed factory floors to be organized by logic rather than by the location of the drive shaft. In the home, electricity was a liberator of time. It eased countless tiresome chores: washing, grinding, lifting, fundamentally changing domestic life and, importantly, the role of women in the economy. Furthermore, consider the abolition of darkness. We moved from firelight, which is dangerous and dim, to the incandescent bulb, and now to the LED, which offers over 100 lumens per watt. This is not just an efficiency gain. It is a fundamental change in the human experience, extending our productive hours and reshaping our relationship with the day-night cycle. If there is one metric that explains the modern world, it is the power-to-mass ratio. History shows us a jump of 4 orders of magnitude. Human muscle provides roughly 1 watt per kilogram. The early steam engines improved this to about 15. But the internal combustion engine leaped to 500, and the modern gas turbine, the jet engine, delivers over 15,000 watts per kilogram. This 4 order of magnitude difference is the rigorous physical explanation for why muscle-powered flight is impossible, and why intercontinental jet travel is routine. We also see this in the growth of scale. We have moved from water wheels generating a few kilowatts to nuclear reactors generating 1.75 gigawatts to 1.75 million kilowatts from a single unit. This density and scale are the unseen engines of our prosperity. To summarize the transition from biomass to fossil fuels, we must recognize 4 fundamental shifts. First, we moved from recent to ancient, burning biomass grown yesterday versus fossil fuels formed millions of years ago. Second, we moved from diffuse to dense, from the low energy density of wood, 17 gigajoules/T, to the high density of oil, 42 gigajoules/T. Third, we moved from perishable to storable. Electricity and biomass are hard to store at scale, whereas coal and oil are easily stockpiled, providing resilience. And fourth, we moved from sprawling to concentrated. Biomass requires vast acreage. Fossil fuels are extracted from pinprick locations on the Earth's crust, with extremely high power densities, watts per square meter. As we look toward future transitions, we are effectively attempting to reverse some of these arrows, returning to recent, diffuse flows like wind and solar, which present significant engineering challenges. While primary energy use grew about 16-fold in the 20th century, the useful energy we derived from it, the actual heat, light, and motion, grew over 40-fold. This discrepancy is due to massive improvements in conversion efficiency. Look at the examples. Wood stoves wasted 75% of their energy. Modern gas furnaces waste less than 5%. Early steam engines were 1% efficient. Modern combined cycle gas turbines exceed 60%. Perhaps the most critical example is ammonia synthesis for fertilizer, the process that feeds the world. Through better catalysis and engineering, we have reduced the energy cost of ammonia by over 70%. These relentless gains act as a virtual energy source, allowing us to achieve higher standards of living without a linear increase in raw resource consumption. All advanced economies follow a similar trajectory. During early industrialization, energy intensity rises as we build heavy infrastructure. Eventually, it peaks and enters a long decline as the economy shifts to services and technology becomes more efficient. The UK's energy intensity, for example, has declined by roughly 80% since its peak in 1880. China has seen a massive drop of 2/3 between 1990 and 2015. However, we must introduce a critical caveat. Efficiency does not automatically equal reduction in total consumption. While China's intensity fell dramatically, its total energy supply grew 4.4 times in the same period. This is the challenge of the developing world. Efficiency is rising, but the appetite for prosperity and growth is rising faster. We live in a world built and powered by fossil fuels. If we look at the anatomy of global consumption, we see distinct dependencies. Oil is not just a fuel. It is the lifeblood of transportation, supplying 95% of the energy that moves people and goods. Coal, despite its decline in the West, remains the backbone of global electricity generation and, crucially, metallurgy. You cannot make steel or cement at the scale required for modern urbanization without massive thermal inputs, largely provided today by coal and gas. The infrastructure embedded in this system, pipelines, refineries, power plants, blast furnaces, represents a capital stock valued in the trillions, with distinct purposes that are not easily swapped for electricity. This is the starting point for any discussion on the future. As Vaclav Smil famously noted, there is a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of energy transitions. They take decades to unfold. Look at the inertia of scale in the US market. Coal didn't disappear when oil arrived. In fact, coal delivered more total energy in the 20th century than it did in the 19th, and globally, it grew massively in the 21st. The 21st century reality is that from 2000 to 2020, global consumption of coal grew by over 70% and natural gas by over 60%. We are not yet in a phase of substitution. We are in a phase of addition. We are adding renewables on top of a growing fossil fuel base. To chart our future, we must respect this inertia. Changing a system that handles gigatons of material and exajoules of energy is akin to turning a supertanker, not a speedboat. The next unlock is fundamentally different. For the first time, we are attempting to transition from high-density stocks, fossil fuels, back to lower-density flows, sun and wind. But we must do so while maintaining the high-energy civilization we have built. This is an engineering challenge of unprecedented scale. It will require not just new generation capacity, but a complete re-architecture of our prime movers, our storage systems, and our grid. We must replicate the reliability of coal and the portability of oil using intermittent electrons. The legacy of past transitions, their scale, their pace, and their profound impact, provides the essential context. We know it can be done, because we have reinvented our energy system 3 times before. But we must proceed with a clear understanding of the physics, the costs, and the time required to turn the key.